For another video in the chef series that I started in June and then lockdown 2 completely screwed over, I've got John Rivera here.
Hey guys.
Who, we discussed doing something.
Oh, this was months in the
May.
making. May, yeah.
And then, we're literally going to do it when lockdown 2 started.
That day of, we're like, maybe we can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
So we had to put it on the shelf. But now here we are. A beautiful day right after Christmas.
Oh, perfect lighting.
After all that hard work of and patience of staying locked down and being responsible. And now we can share these moments again with each other.
Looking forward to it.
Amazing. So
what are we making? I don't know.
Jinx. So we're making
Dinuguan?
Dinuguan. So Dinuguan is a Filipino. It was very good actually.
Dinuguan.
Yeah, so it's a Filipino blood stew. Where I'm from in the Philippines in central Luzon, it's very landlocked. So we survived on agriculture and on the land. So a lot of vegetables, a lot of meat, but not just meat or muscle. We had to be resourceful. So we use a lot of offal. And I grew up eating a lot of offal, and when you slaughter a pig, especially your own pig in the Philippines, you want to maximize everything you get out of it. So we're using the blood here. We have some pork heart, pork liver, the stomach, the intestine, and the neck. It's not too freaky, you know. For me, these are the best parts of the pig. They're often underutilized here in Australia, but for me, they give some of the best texture, best flavor. The nutrients are there as well, and it just takes a little bit of know-how to transform them into something delicious and something really, really palatable. Yeah, that's a bad word for it. Palatable. Yeah. It's going to be delicious.
Well, we love eating offal. We're not so good with cooking it. We tried to make tripe tacos once, and our housemates at the time weren't too happy with the way the apartment smelled. But we do eat it a lot. Obviously, hot pot. I think you go for hot pot, and the tripe and the offal is always the best bit. You have that piece of steak, and they put fillet and stuff in there, and it doesn't capture any of the flavour.
Exactly.
The texture is just boring.
And it's just going to a really good pho place, and they put in all that tendon, the tripe, the blood cake when you get bumbu hue. It's absolutely amazing. So don't be scared. If anything, eat more of this. This is very sustainable way of eating meat and livestock.
That's good for you.
Yeah.
Full of iron and minerals and
Unless
stuff.
you have gout.
Unless
you have don't you?
I do not have gout.
All right.
Well, that.
Well, so I've kind of just pre-prepped these a little bit. Back in the Philippines, what they would do, they would just kind of wash that in a lot of vinegar and salt. So what I've done, I've just rinsed that through cold water. Butchers here in Australia are very good, and abattoirs, to keep things very clean. So you don't have to worry too much about it. But what I've done with the intestine and stomach, I've just boiled it twice in salted water with vinegar and ginger. And that gets rid of that funk that you were talking about before with tripe, and makes it easier to cut as well, because it kind of just firms everything up. With more of the bloodier things, like not the blood, with the heart and the liver, I've just soaked that overnight in milk, and that helps draw out some of that internal blood, that irony flavor, and it just makes it a bit more smooth. And and the pork blood usually coagulates. So when you see pork getting drained of its blood, the good people, or if you do it yourself, you'd usually keep stirring it so it wouldn't coagulate straight away. This was a jelly that you can get in any Asian butcher, or you can ask your butcher for it. I'm sure they can get it. And I've just whisked that up. I don't mind too much if there's some lumps in there still. There's a version of Dinuguan from Tinumis where they actually put in curdled blood in there instead of making it part of the sauce, which is absolutely delicious as well. So that'll be kind of like a little mix. And all we got to do is just chop this up. So do you want to get your hands dirty, Paul?
Yep.
Beautiful.
So there are lots of regional variations on the dish?
So Dinuguan is mostly a northern dish in the Philippines, but yes, it does vary from region to region. So where I'm from, it's called Nueva Ecija in the middle, and we use tamarind as our souring agent for ours. And as I mentioned before, we kind of curdle the blood. But I've never really seen this down in the south. So Philippines is an interesting place because I think everybody, if you think about Filipino food, you know, the adobo, the sisig, the sinigang,
Yeah.
which is very much Luzon or northern. But Philippines is a country made up of about 7,000 islands. So each region, each island being a different kind of geography, has a different kind of cuisine. So down south, where there's a lot more Muslims and it's closer to Malaysia, Indonesia, they actually cook with a lot more turmeric and whatnot. So it's really interesting, and there's a lot to learn still.
Yeah.
So we've got the stomach up next, Paul, and just so with these two, yeah, I've just boiled it twice in vinegar, water, and salt, and that kind of just firms it up. Easier to slice. Before this, it was a bit of like a bit of a party. So this is technically the pig tripe, and what we'll do is just come down the middle, or split it open, and then we can just get nice cubes again. It's a very interesting, texture when it cooks. And this is the kind of the textures we love, you know, the kind of crunchy kind of.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily always look for tender. I think even with steaks for myself, I don't necessarily get a fillet because I do kind of love the texture of things. Would you like to do the pork neck here? And we'll just get it into some dices similar to that.
So I've had this dish for a long time. I've eaten it twice.
This dish?
Before, yeah. It's the first time I was in New York.
Yep.
And I went to Jeepney.
Yeah, yep.
And that's just such a great place.
Oh, amazing.
But I was there by myself, and it sucked it away because it was that. What's that thing that happens in the Philippines where everybody like puts all the food out on the table and eat their hands?
The kamaya.
Yeah.
The boodle fight. Yeah.
So they do that. And it was the night where that was on.
Yeah.
So everybody's there with their mates, and they've got these big tables. I'm just sitting there by myself. But I just said, well, like, what do you recommend I order? And they were like, oh, you got to get, this was one of the dishes.
Yeah.
And I ate it, and I was just like, game changer. So
yeah.
good.
Jeepney's an amazing place. I think it's one of those trailblazers. It really inspired a lot of Filipino cooks like myself. That your culture and your cuisine can be, well, not accepted, but it can shine in Western culture because, you know, for myself as an immigrant here in Australia, growing up, we guarded our own food and our own recipes and culture within ourselves, kept it in the house or kept it within the community. Whereas, you know, places like Australia are so multicultural and accepting and open that it's so beautiful to be able to share what we have at home and what we grew up with to everybody else.
Yeah.
And where was the second time, Paul?
Second time was in Footscray Market.
Yep.
There's a place there that I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. Right in the market, little
little food hall section at the back.
Yeah.
And that was also really good.
Yeah. I think, you know, Dinuguan, even for us as Filipinos growing up, well, especially the ones that were born here, they always euphemized the name and called it chocolate meat because they never wanted to, well, I guess, accept the fact, or the kids would never be like, oh, no, I don't want to eat blood and get a bit touchy. Yeah. And, you know, I know a lot of cousins and friends who got tricked into eating. It's like, oh, it's just chocolate meat. But, you know, for me, actually, I believe that calling it by its actual name is so much more respectful to why we have it.
Yeah.
And, you know, just eat blood.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
Exactly.
It's not going to kill you, and it's delicious if it's made right.
I know my mum used to, my grandparents used to cook a lot of offal. I hated it as a kid.
Yeah.
And they didn't try to hide what it was. They have some brains, have some kidneys, have some livers. I was like, gross. And now my mum sees me all this stuff. She's like, I tried to feed it to you for years. You never ate any of it, and now you eat it. So, yeah.
So with the heart here, I think we'll just use half. And the heart's it's an amazing texture as well. One of the things I love is, like, have you had duck hearts before?
Yep.
Duck hearts are amazing. Just kind of barbecued, and that texture and the bouncy and the bit of like chew, it's absolutely amazing. I'll just take off that.
I think hearts are one of the things that, even though a lot of people don't think it, are probably one of the most accessible things. I know, like, going to Japan, when you eat like heart at a yakitori restaurant, it's like the best.
Yeah.
And then in we're in South America, with quite a bit of heart there as well. And yeah, the way they do it grilled, it's just amazing texture.
So we'll just dice these up. Actually, you know what? Let's use all the heart. Let's not be heartless.
Yeah. I heard crickets.
It's probably my wife.
Almost as bad as my jokes.
Yeah, I know.
I'm sorry to all the women in our life.
That's okay, we forgive you. It's part of the reason we married you.
And you know, you don't have to be super precise on these cuts. You know, cut them as rough, as big, or as small as you'd like. I like things a bit chunky. I like to know I'm eating these things.
Yep.
So we're going to keep it nice and big.
Yeah, that's good.
What's your favourite internal organ, Paul?
My favourite internal.
How many times have you been asked that question in your life?
Never. I don't think.
Tripe.
It's got it's definitely tripe.
So like, what do they call it in Chinese? It's like the 1,000-string tripe.
Yeah.
So like the larger.
And that was probably one of the first pieces of. I guess it's weird because you look at offal, like there's heart, and I kind of consider like heart, kidney, liver in like one.
Yep.
Kind of segment, and then basically it's
the red stuff.
As I've learnt from my day job, as I've told you, there's red offal and green offal.
Yep.
So from red offal, it's definitely heart, and for green offal, tripe. You know, I used to, back when I lived in Perth, I used to go to Hong Kong and Singapore quite a bit. So I really got to love tripe, especially in Hong Kong.
Oh yeah. Now, would you like to dice this up for us, Paul?
Yeah.
Just the same size there, and I can get started on some of these aromats.
Oh. And tongue is great.
Oh yeah,
isn't it? Like it's one of those things. It's what you consider. Like I've never really considered tongue to be off on.
Right. Yeah.
Like, but yeah, it is.
And so is skin. Skin is delicious.
I don't reckon anyone that's probably a lot of people don't consider something that. Yeah, probably a lot of people don't realise that things they enjoy actually are offal.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. And it's such a shame for these things to just end up in dog food or cat food, or who knows what else it ends up in.
It's just a mindset though, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's what my grandparents coming here and eating lamb, and everyone's like, one of these weird immigrants eating lamb, that's dog food.
Yeah.
And now everyone eats lamb.
Now it's a national dish, isn't it? National meat, isn't it?
Everyone loves it. It's just, I think going from what you were saying, people have to respect the animal. Like people don't want to. People just want to get a piece of steak, shrink wrapped, and ignore what it is. You have to own up to what it is. Like if you can't own up to that, honestly, like, be vegetarian.
Yeah.
Like you have to respect that this is an animal that has died to give you sustenance.
Yeah.
Like lean into that.
But I think this is. I think the first part of being sustainable is firstly supporting the farms that do it right. That don't do it in cages and that treat the animal humanely. I remember speaking to David Blackmore when I was working at Rockpool, and he said, our beef has one bad day in its life, and that's obviously when it's slaughtered, and that's how it should be with a lot of these animals, and you taste the difference. You really do taste the difference.
Yeah.
But also being mindful of these parts that, as a human being as well, like we've got all these internal organs. So when I guess a bravery as well of doing these things, I don't think anybody would ever want a board covered in blood from a liver, but some of the best things are made from like duck liver parfait.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing, yeah.
I mean, a lot of people say they don't eat offal. It's like, well, they eat sausages.
Yeah.
It's like, well, yeah.
Okay, we're back on.
Cool.
All right.
So now we've got all our offal prepped there beautifully, as chunky or as fine as you like. Now aromats now. Filipino food is nothing without garlic. Like almost everything has garlic. Fried rice, you'll see later, it's just literally fried rice and garlic. And in true Filipino fashion, this recipe calls for 4 cloves. I'm gonna put 5.
Yep.
Because
You can never have too much garlic.
no, I'm sure you guys will agree too. 1 onion and a knob of ginger. The ginger, once again, just helps to clear out that funk that you get from offal, and gives it a little bit of a spice as well. So, you know, the onions, we're just gonna dice roughly again, or as well. And this will all stew down anyway, so you don't need to be super.
Yeah.
I thank Khan for my better knife skills now after working at Sunda. Would have to just chop up a whole lot of stuff for sambals and whatnot, especially when we went to the hotel.
Oh yeah.
The garlic, once again, like usually you'd crush it. Like everything is crushed garlic in the Philippines, but I kind of like them a bit bigger, and I actually like kind of finding pieces of garlic in there once it's cooked down. With the ginger, you can go about different ways. You could, once again, mince it. You could do little batons. I just like them kind of thin, long slices like that. That way you can pick them out if you don't like to eat them. Or, like me, I love eating the ginger and everything. So that's a nice little treat, but if you don't want it, you can easily locate it and pick it out. I'm just going to put a couple tablespoons of coconut vinegar into the blood. So the blood will go in at the end, at the last 15 minutes, and it'll just finish the sauce so it doesn't curdle up and cook out too much. The vinegar is just there to help it with the brightness later. The vinegar goes into this dish twice. So let's get this one cranking if we can, please, Paul. In the Philippines, I guess we're not scared of the fat, or especially with adobo. When we make pork and chicken adobo, my dad especially lets all that fat render out. And it's actually a practical thing because pre-refrigeration in the Philippines, that layer of fat will preserve your food. It does not preserve your arteries though. I have a lineage of high blood pressure. So just kind of like a medium-high heat here. And I'm going to start off with the pork neck, and we're going to get that a little bit brown first and sealed. Splattering everywhere. So you just want to get a little bit of colour on here. When my in-laws or my dad makes this is probably as far as they'll go. But I guess instinctively as a chef, we want to build flavour. So I want to get a little bit of colour on there. And that'll kind of make the whole dish a bit richer later on. Yeah.
Yeah, how do you find that dishes that you grew up with, that you do make modifications now, just like with your chefing experience?
I think for myself, it's just all about practicality. There's no right way to do something as long as the end result's the same. Yeah. There's different ways to skin a cat. I guess it's just my way of how Filipinos, my dad's generation, learned Filipino food through, I guess, the shortcut way. So growing up, I never knew how to make sinigang unless it was out of a packet. Yep. Which is handy because everyone's so time poor now. Skills just aren't as good in the kitchen, and quite honestly, no one really wants to slave away at the stoves after a long day at work and whatnot. But what I've really found great is just being able to rediscover these recipes and go from A to Z the right way, and understand it more. So now we're going to go in with the rest of our beautiful white innards, so the intestine and the stomach.
Yep.
And this will start to release a lot of fat. There's actually a chicharron. I don't know if you've had Filipino chicharron, the pig meat. There's a chicharron in the Philippines called chicharron bulaklak. So bulaklak means flour, but it's actually made of beef intestine, like one of the, and they pretty much braise it down and then fry it, and it frills up crispy to look like a flour. But I never realized how really fatty and rich it was. But I would smash that and go to the Philippines. They'd actually make chicharron out of the pork intestine as well, which is delicious with a lot of spiced vinegar.
Sounds amazing. Smells good already.
Yeah, it's not. You'd expect it to be a bit funky, but with all the preparation that we did before, with the boiling and the cleaning, it should actually just be kind of like an intense porky.
Yeah.
Porky's a great adjective, isn't it?
Smells porky, yeah.
So that just gets a little bit of colour. And then we'll put our hearts in. Now the hearts will heat up a little bit more, give it more power. And you can already see the chewiness and yeah.
Awesome.
So we'll just let that fry, do its thing for a couple more minutes. I just want to get heat back into the pan because we do have quite a bit of protein in there, and we'll put in our onions and our garlic, and we'll give that a bit of a sweat till it's translucent.
Cool.
So now that we've kind of let that caramelize for a few minutes, you'll see that a lot of the pork fat is actually rendered out.
Yeah,
that is money. So what we're going to do now, we're going to saute the onions and the garlic in that pork fat and get them nice and translucent. And that'll add another layer of flavour in there. Yeah. Lard and pork fat was actually the oil that many Asian countries use. Well, Philippines anyway, I can speak of. And pork lard was brought by the Spanish to the Philippines. So our pastries like ensaimada, well now it's more of a brioche. It started off as a pork lard enriched bread. So we really love this stuff. There's even another pastry called popiang baboy, which is almost like a little mooncake. And baboy means pig. And I always grew up like, where's the pig in this? But the onions are actually caramelized down with sugar and lard.
Yeah.
And it just gives it this amazing like richness and umami. And that sounds weird for a dessert, but I guess that's what Filipino food is, balancing the sweet, salty, sour, and I'd say umami, but it's really more just fat.
Fat is flavour.
We're back on.
So now that it's nice and the onions and garlic are nice and translucent, what I'll do, I'll just scatter this ginger around as such. And once again, you can eat that. I love eating that. Or if you like mustard seed, you'll just pick it out. So then we'll just deglaze that with about a cup of coconut vinegar. And we'll let that boil and evaporate. Just so, well, two things. All this beautiful kind of brown sticky stuff will come off. And it'll just reduce the harshness of that vinegar. You'll get something a bit more sweet. Especially if coconut vinegar, it reduces down and cooks down quite sweet. Philippines has a massive vinegar culture. I mean, everything that we have has to have some sort of sour element.
Yeah.
Coconut vinegar is just one of them. We have palm vinegar, cane vinegar. There's this kind of like undistilled or like unrefined cane vinegar from Ilocos up north. That's like brown and just really like molasses. It's almost the same shade as this fish sauce here. I went to a restaurant in the Philippines where they served you a beef tendon chicharron, and it was like a vinegar tasting, and they just poured all these different vinegars, and you know, you're just kind of swiping your chicharron through, and it was amazing.
Wow.
But apart from, as well as that, we put heaps of spices in some vinegar, and just let it age for a long time, and that'll be your dip or your sausawan for chicharron and other things.
I guess a lot of people just think vinegar and like vinegar's just vinegar.
Yeah.
They don't think about how different it could be.
Good vinegar can really, you know, add something and change something. I think white vinegar, everybody just kind of thinks you just use it to clean your grout.
Yeah.
But when you get good vinegar, it can really kind of evolve your dish into something. Now, Paul, you see that the vinegar's reduced quite a, well, not a fair bit, but it's getting that kind of syrupy consistency now. I'm just going to scrape all that goodness off the bottom. That's all flavour. And then we'll top this up with a couple of cups of water, and we'll let that simmer and braise down. So it's just come up to a simmer now. We'll keep simmering it like this for maybe about 20 minutes. What we will do though is just this first bit of fat and scum that's come up, we'll just give that a bit of a skim, just to keep it clean. All the other fat later on that renders out we'll keep, and that'll be all the good stuff. But all this for now, we'll just get rid. This is kind of like that last bit of scum after that, all that blood. So
It's like when we made ramen.
yeah, it kind of looks like a bit. This would be a great ramen broth.
It would actually.
Yeah, so now we'll just simmer that until it's tender on like a medium heat. And actually, at this point, we might add a little bit of tamarind just to help the sweetness. So just a tablespoon tamarind, and that'll just give it another layer of acidity and sweetness. And this stuff's really handy, jarred tamarind paste, because you can just use it straight away instead of having to boil the tamarind or squeeze it out and get rid of the seeds yourself. So from here we can actually go from two parts. So we're gonna add the blood now, which will make it dinuguan. But there's another dish from up north in the Philippines called pinapaitan. So pait means bitter. So pinapaitan means to make it bitter. And what they would add to the soup of all the entrails and innards is the stomach bile. And that would turn it into this kind of like sour, salty, bitter soup that really doesn't sell it, but it's full of texture. It's full of these kind of like fatty, sour flavors. That's perfect when you're drinking, you know, out in tropical Southeast Asia when you're sweating, you got a cold beer and you're just snacking on this bitter and sour soup, and it's absolutely amazing.
Because that was already quite like bitter and salty that I had before.
So a lot of the soups or broths always will start with onion, garlic, and ginger, and that will be the basis of things. And you can kind of just go to different roads. So there's one dish called tinola, which is a ginger and pepper chicken soup, and yeah, ginger's amazing. You know.
Is this a celebratory dish, or more like you do it, say, on a family event or someone's birthday, or it's just like you feel like some comfort food?
It's like here in Australia?
Yeah, for you guys.
For us, it's kind of just like when you feel like it. But it is something kind of just like, you have to plan for it. You have to plan to make dinuguan. It's just not like, we have intestines in the fridge, you got to use it up. So you have to be like, for this day, let's make dinuguan, go out and get the stuff. But in the Philippines, it's kind of just like, if you go to a little cafeteria, most of the time they'll have it, just because it's quite cheap. Like all of this that I got was actually, all this meat, which is about 1 point something kilos, ended up only being about $28. So
decent amount of.
Especially once it's in the Philippines, it's much cheaper, so you can just make your money on top of that. The coolest one I saw when we went back home early this year for the wedding, we had a big family reunion. On my dad's side, they got a lechon.
Yep.
So they slaughtered the pig in the morning. That was that fresh. and then they got the pig on the spit and they roasted it, and all the entrails and the blood, they turned that into the dinuguan. So it was fresh, and then the pig came, and then the dinuguan came as well with it, and that was amazing. And I think that really inspired me. I was like, you know, that is actually how you should be treating this pig, because literally everything but the oink is on the table right now. So now that this has been simmering away for about 15-20 minutes now, and you can simmer it for longer if you want things more tender. But this is, you know, getting there. The heart still has a bit of a chew. The intestine is a bit more tender now, but it's really starting to break down. Once again, if you want it to be more tender, keep going, but I think it's good to appreciate those different textures of these different organs, and you know exactly what you're having. So now we turn the heat onto more on the lower side. So like I mentioned before, I didn't strain this blood out because I quite like that, how it kind of cakes up a little bit. And you just want it to, you know, stir this now, and you almost want to cook that blood custard. You don't want it to kind of pool or anything, and you get this iconic black, that chocolate meat. And we'll just let this simmer again for another 10 minutes. At this point, we'll add the livers in, and that'll just kind of gently simmer and poach. And then we'll finish the seasoning afterwards. Oh, don't forget the chilies. So we would use green chilies for this. We call siling pangsigang, which is, it's not as spicy, but it is there. So 4 of those, but because we like spicy things, we're going to add 3 of these scud chilies as well. So when the chili is in, we'll just let it simmer on a low heat. But what I like to do is I just like to kind of press the chili a little bit and crush it just that little bit to help it release its flavor, because I do like spicy food. You don't have to do this if you're not into it, but you know, that'll really help it to flavor this sauce. So now, after simmering this for about 10 to 15 minutes, that sauce is almost sticking to a gravy. The textures, yeah. And you do this slowly. I think we were talking about this, Lauren, about reducing things slowly. When you do this slowly, you reduce it at a nice pace so that the things don't split out. You don't have this kind of pool of oil or whatever, and the blood is actually and all the fats have emulsified so that you get this really nice shiny rich sauce. So we haven't put any seasoning in this since the start, and this is the part where we will.
Let's use that chocolate analogy. It's almost like tempered chocolate.
It's almost like a rich mole now. So we'll season it with fish sauce, and this is a bit much at the start, but this is a beautiful Filipino unrefined fish sauce that my friend John Rivera from Toyo in Manila gave to me when he came over. And Toyo is an amazing restaurant. It's one of the restaurants that actually inspired me to take on Filipino food. So this is a nice little present. Fish sauce is a very important ingredient in the Philippines. Of course, we use salt to season things, but fish sauce adds another layer of umami, and it's almost that cleaner seasoning. It doesn't kind of claw your mouth. So always add the fish sauce first, or the salt, because that will bring out all the other flavors. And I think if we added the fish sauce or any seasoning at the start of this, you'll just get something that's too salty.
Yep.
As it reduces down. This way you can keep that seasoning fresh, you can able to control it. And we'll just taste it to see, after seasoning it with fish sauce, if it needs any more vinegar or tamarind. I think it needs a little bit more fish sauce. I think we're there. A lot of the recipes as well would ask for sugar in this, kind of balance it out. But adding that tamarind at the start, I think has meant that we didn't need that sugar. As it reduced, it would have caramelized and let out its own sugars. And are you ready, Paul?
I'm ready.
It smells delicious.
It smells so good.
This feels like I'm imposing on a romantic moment between the two of you.
Do that in slow motion. It's so good. Thanks, Paul. It's rich because of that blood. That ginger gives it a nice kind of cleanliness.
Yeah. Nice tang.
Yeah, from that vinegar.
Ever so slight kick of chili at
Yeah.
the end.
But
I wouldn't describe it as chili.
yeah, and all that, you know, all the textures of the offal will just be amazing with rice. So here we have it, Paul. Dinuguan, Filipino blood stew with all of the innards and offal of the pig. We've got some intestine, some stomach, liver, and heart in there.
All the good stuff.
All the good stuff. Your amazing garlic rice here, or Lauren's garlic rice. Who wants to take credit?
No, I'll take credit for this one.
That,
I looked up the recipe. I suggested we should do garlic rice.
and this
So I've
is
got to impress John.
this looks great. It's going to go so well with the dinuguan. And so I don't usually do this, but a lot of the older generation do. You have with the dinuguan is puto. So it's a steamed rice cake, a very rich, buttery one. And once again, it's that contrast of spicy, sour, salty with this sweet, buttery richness. And what they would do, they'd kind of just use that and break it apart and dip it in the gravy, and hope you like it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Let's
Awesome. Let's dig in.
Let's dig in.